From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
If. For such a small word, it packs a wallop. If I live to 100, if Social Security isn't enough, if my heart gets broken, if she says yes. We believe if should never hold you back. If should be managed with a plan that builds on what you already have. Together, we can create a personal safety net, a launching pad for all those brilliant ifs in the middle of life. You can call on our expertise and get guarantees for the if in life. After all, we're MetLife.
Issue 1, Obamacare rules. We are done.
Tonight's vote is not a victory for any one party. It's a victory for the American people. And it's a victory for common sense.
Well, we'll see.
Probably goes without saying that
President Obama's victory, health insurance for 31 million Americans, with 14 million yet to come, was entirely partisan. Ostensibly, it was a victory for one party. Not a single Republican voted yes on the Obama health insurance program. 178 Republicans voted, no absentees, and they all voted no. So, the passage of Obamacare in the House of Representatives late last Sunday night is an exclusively Democratic win. 253 members of the House are Democrats. Of these 253 Democrats, 219 voted yes on Obamacare. 34 of the 253 Democrats voted no. And to repeat, all 178 Republicans in the House voted against Obamacare. The final tally, 219 yes, 212 no.
Let me repeat one statistic. 0 Republicans voted for this entitlement. Question. In the past, landmark legislation has gotten bipartisan support. Bipartisan. Like Social Security, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and Medicare. Obamacare was a purely partisan victory. What does that say about President Obama's leadership, Pat Buchanan?
Well, John, what it says is, look, the American people in every way possible, in polls, in demonstrations, in town hall meetings, in elections, in surveys, said, please, we don't want this bill. This is not an American victory. This is a victory of the left wing of the Democratic Party. There was a bipartisan majority against this bill in the House. Obama had to buy and bribe his own representatives. In that sense, it is a victory for his leadership there, John, but I think this is going to inflate the deficit and the debt. I think there's a real possibility this thing could be a disaster. If it is, it belongs entirely to the liberal wing of the Democratic Party.
Where to start? This bill actually mimics the bill that Mitt Romney, a Republican, signed into law in Massachusetts. It resembles the health care proposal that President Nixon introduced in the 70s that Ted Kennedy went to his grave regretting that he didn't partner with that president to make that a reality. And in your introduction, Republicans opposed Medicare and Social Security. In the end, some of them did vote for it, but that was they did it kicking and screaming. And
well, the determinative vote was included Republicans.
Right, and President Clinton's budget plan in 1993, which set us on a course to a balanced budget, did not receive a single Republican vote. So there is precedence here. And the Republicans really did decide early on that they were going to oppose this no matter what. Many of their ideas are included. They did not want this president to get an achievement that would rank up there alongside of Medicare and Social Security as an entitlement program that people would like. And it does put this country on a path toward guaranteeing health care as a right and not a privilege, and not something that insurance companies decide whether you qualify or not.
Clinton's budget is not an entitlement. This is an entitlement.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Talking about major legislation that went through without Republican support.
Well,
that was my definition.
that is not the way I phrased the question, because I have said that this is an entitlement, and no entitlement has gotten that zero vote.
To quote Eleanor, where to begin? On your point about bipartisanship and all of those examples you mentioned, it wasn't just Republicans that went along with Democrats to expand government in those examples or do the Voting Rights Act, but all of those things had widespread public support as well. Obamacare does not. The Republicans also were shut out by the Obama White House and by the Democrats starting in April of last year from any process, and they quickly realized that none of their ideas were going to be seriously incorporated. What the Republicans understand, as well as the Democrats, is that health care was not about health care. Health care was about a massive new expansion of government. It was about expanding the base of people who would be dependent on the government and ultimately then creating a permanent Democratic majority. That's why most of the American people who see this as a huge infringement on their economic and individual liberties oppose this by 60% and still do.
Before you get to this, Bill, let me get this in here, and you can address it with your wisdom. Okay, is Obamacare prohibited by the U.S. Constitution?
The 10th Amendment of the Constitution is designed to protect the rights of the states against any possible inroads by the U.S. federal government, referred to here as the United States. Quote, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people, unquote. Here's the argument of Bill McCollum, Florida Attorney General, four-term congressman, and currently seeking to be governor of Florida.
I served in Congress. I know what that is. This is conscripting states' resources. It's taking the states' resources and putting it to use for the federal government's purposes and manipulating the states to their end to a degree that is just beyond the sovereign protections that are in the Constitution for states.
Attorney General McCollum has 2 points. One, state sovereignty. McCollum believes the federal government is forcing states to enact health care policies they do not want and cannot afford. 2, individual sovereignty. McCollum believes the federal government does not have the power to force individual Americans to buy coverage. That's a mandate, by the way, that if disobeyed under Obamacare would mean fines of $2,500 per family. 13 other state attorneys general are filing suit with McCollum on behalf of their states: Alabama, Colorado, Idaho, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Washington State.
Question, is Attorney General McCollum right? Namely, Obamacare violates state sovereignty and individual sovereignty, both guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution.
First thing I want to say is he's dead wrong. But before that, I want to say that Joe Biden is right about health care, and Monica and Pat are wrong. This is a BFD, and you bet, and it's good for Democrats. And Republicans made a huge mistake in opposing this, a huge mistake in not voting for it. They've got nothing to offer, and the more people know what's in this bill, the more people see how it's going to help their families, they're going to like it. And Republicans are just going to say, what do we deliver? Nothing. McCollum, where he's dead wrong, is in 2 ways. And first of all, he's running for governor. Right. All these other guys are running for governor. What do attorney generals do? They run for governor, they run for senator. This is his chance to get his mug on television, number one. Number two, it's without merit because there's a provision in the legislation that says that states can opt out of the requirements of this legislation as long as they're covering everybody in their state. So he doesn't have a basis for his lawsuit.
Where he's got a strong point is the individual mandate. McCollum, where he's got a really strong point. I agree with Bill on part of it. It's going to be tough on the states' rights. But the individual rights, you cannot force an American citizen to buy a product he does not want. Health insurance. Health insurance is a product. That was like saying you also got to buy life insurance. I don't think the state can do that.
Okay, is Obamacare paid for by slashing Medicare?
Listen to what Obamacare does to Medicare, as seen by Senator Judge Gregg, Republican from New Hampshire. Gregg notes that the CBO says that over the next 10 years, the payout for Obama insurance will cost $1 trillion. Now, $500 billion of that $1 trillion will come from cutting Medicare's hospital charges, doctors' fees, etc. Greg says it is outrageous to slash Medicare for Obamacare.
You know Medicare is going bankrupt in probably about 10 years. And yet, rather than resolving that problem or trying to help to resolve that problem by making these difficult reductions in Medicare and using the money to make Medicare more solvent, you're taking that money and you're spending it over here on new entitlements.
Question. Senator Judge Gregg claims that Obamacare is de facto being paid for by draining Medicare. Is he right?
Yes, he is absolutely right. $500 billion in cuts proposed in Obamacare. No Congress has ever gone down the road of slashing an entitlement that much. It's double counted money. Nobody believes that that cut is actually going to happen. And the Democrats say, well, we're going to do it by slashing Medicare Advantage. Right, the one free market area of Medicare they want to go after.
Well, Monica's got all the Republican talking points, and you will hear that repeated over and over as we
do you have any Democratic talking points?
Right.
We want the Democratic talking points to be registered on this program.
How about the facts?
Do I get to finish? As we go through this year, we will hear more of this as the Republicans campaign on a repeal platform, asking people if they can take away their health insurance and popular insurance provisions. In terms of the Medicare provisions, what it does is it ends the subsidies to insurance companies for Medicare Advantage to encourage more seniors to get into managed care and HMOs. And insurance companies...
You mean these are abuses?
No, and insurance companies, in order to attract customers, added things like gym memberships and added vision care. Some of the benefits are very good. But the administration is not cutting traditional Medicare, and it will be up to the insurance companies.
Let her finish her point.
It will be up to the insurance companies to decide if they want to cut those benefits and lose clients in what will be a much more competitive insurance environment.
Well, is this a buyout of the insurance companies? Is Obama recovering his base?
Double counting.
It's a tightened regulation of insurance, which is needed.
They are double counting. They're taking.
Who's they?
They are the Obamites. They're taking the Medicare funds. Say, we're going to take these out of here. We're going to repair Medicare with them, and we're also going to cover 30 million people. They are double counting the Medicare savings.
All right, first of all, the supreme irony cannot go unnoted here that the Republicans who wanted to kill Medicare just a couple of years ago are now screaming because Obama is at least putting some sense into the economics of Medicare. There are tremendous savings in Medicare.
When did that occur?
First of all,
when did the Republicans take that position?
Under Newt Gingrich.
Under Newt Gingrich?
Yeah.
How many years ago was that?
Well, I don't care. That's been the Republican.
When people become vested in it, it becomes immovable. That's why Republicans have backed off.
John, that has been their mantra until this bill. And then suddenly when Obama is for actually making some sensible cuts in Medicare coverage, I mean, there's a lot of waste in Medicare. All the different procedures that people have to go through. You clean it up, you save billions of dollars.
Communicated with you on that?
John, that's why the older people are up in arms. The older people.
Let them address my question.
Which is prevention. Now seniors get all these preventive steps without having to make one co-payment or any fee or anything.
Quickly, ask yourself why the older people are out there fighting it to the death, and why, and who gets the benefits, and who pays the price?
AARP support it?
Because they sell insurance.
Exit question. Arguably, under Obamacare, seniors will lose $500 billion from Medicare to pay for Obamacare, while the uninsured, mostly young people ages 18 to 29, his voters, Obama's voters, will get federal subsidies to buy mandated health coverage. So, is this the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer since the creation of Social Security?
It's also an ethnic wealth transfer, John. That is why you're seeing all your Tea Parties are middle-aged and older white folks, and the beneficiaries are the poor, and a lot of them are minorities, and that's the clash you've got on this bill.
Did you just say 18 to 29 gets subsidized? That's because 18 to 26 can stay on their parents' policy? Is this all considered part of the redistribution of wealth? This is a big social movement away from the Reagan era, which basically did redistribute wealth to the upper reaches of the income chain, and it does give more people a shot and brings them into the American dream, and it's what this
on.
president.
This
come on! This is what this
filibustering this whole time.
This is what this president campaigned on. You should not be surprised.
The 18 to 29. The 18 to 29 is the assumption that the parents don't have insurance to take the kids on board.
Well, wait a minute. The whole point of it, I agree with Eleanor that nobody should be surprised about this. Barack Obama was the most liberal member of the U.S. Senate when he was running for president. This is not a big mystery.
Let her finish.
Hold on. He was the #1 ranked top liberal in the U.S. Senate. Anyway, that's an indisputable fact. Indisputable fact. Wait, let me make my point here because everybody else filibustered. The whole point of health care was about redistributing wealth. It was not about health care, John. And now we get in the New York Times this week, after it's passed and become law and too late to do anything about it, the New York Times saying the whole objective of Obamacare was to address wealth inequality. It was not about health care or the American dream.
What do you say to that?
That's
look,
a bad
let me just say.
Socialism.
All right, I'll get over it.
Socialism or fascism?
Look, here's the reality.
Stay with socialism.
It's called preserving the middle class.
Here's the reality. 32 million people who could never afford to buy health insurance before can today. 95% of Americans are covered. This is good for doctors. It's good for hospitals.
Why are doctors against
It's good for patients.
They're not
It's good for Medicare.
It's
Every
good,
doctor
and
I
it's
talk
good
to
for people.
cleans
It's
up
good for
Medicare.
seniors. And by the way, John, I hate to correct you, but seniors also voted for Barack Obama.
Issue 2. What's the forecast for the U.S. economy?
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather since my man.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 millions of our citizens.
Democratic President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Social Security into law 75 years ago. Social Security provides pensions for retired Americans. It is funded largely by payroll taxes. This week, Social Security reached a milestone, and it was not a good one. Social Security this year will pay out more in benefits than it will receive in payroll tax revenues. It's the first time this has happened in the 75-year history of the system. This critical marker was not expected to be reached until at least 2016, says the Congressional Budget Office. Analysts say that this is a tipping point that makes the first step in a long, slow march towards Social Security insolvency, unless Congress figures out a way to expand the program's funding. Item, housing. New home sales last month fell to the lowest point on record, going back nearly 50 years. Item, gasoline. Gas prices have climbed $1 in the past year and poised to reach $3 a gallon. Item, unemployment, currently 9.7%, will remain at 9% or above until 2012, 2 years from now.
Question, does the Social Security debacle underscore Obama's failure to create the policies needed to put Americans back to work? Pat Buchanan.
John, it sure does. Let me tell you about Social Security. 10,000 Americans every day, about 18 months from now, will be retiring every day going on Social Security. Besides that, people say, well, we're going to have the money up till 2037. Look, this thing starts adding to the deficit right away. We used to have $100 billion a year surplus, which we use for general expenses and things. This is, the country, John, is Greece writ large.
Bill.
Let me tell you two facts about Social Security. There are 13 million American seniors who would be living in poverty today were it not for Social Security. And number two, there's a $29 billion shortfall in Social Security this year. The trust fund has a $2.5 trillion surplus. So this is a problem. It's not a huge problem. It will be fixed. And the Debt Commission is the first one that's going to address it. Obama called for the Debt Commission. They're going to come up with some solutions which I think are going to include raising the retirement age and a means test for Social Security.
A means test?
Yeah, both of which are...
It ought to be made clear that the Social Security fund, your contribution to it does not have your name on it. It goes into a fund, and the fund is distributed according to the formula used by Social Security.
The fund is
it's not a means test. If it were a means test, it's quite possible that you could have lived a frugal life. You could have worked very hard, and you are paid what your proportionate amount is, which may not be appropriate in view of the fact that you've made savings. You
no,
follow
it's not a means test now, but it could be run with the means test.
But you see the means test as Obama's solution to the
no. I'm saying
you
that
do
the
not.
debt. I would. The Debt Commission will make some recommendations
You
on
don't
how
see
to
the
fix
inequities
Social
attached
Security.
to the means test.
I see the inequities today of someone who doesn't need it, taking it from someone who does.
What do you think?
Well, it becomes welfare then.
That's a welfare. It
Social
becomes
Security.
it doesn't degenerate, but it becomes welfare.
welfare
So-
program.
Look, you can't have it both ways. You want to extend the program, you're going to have to make some
Are there
changes.
other ways to extend the program?
Well, Social Security can be fixed relatively painlessly. President Reagan did it with Tip O'Neill, the Democrat. You can raise the retirement age. You can probably trim the benefits for people, younger people. You can raise the cap on the amount of income where you collect Social Security. You could eliminate the cap and make all of those higher income people pay Social Security without imposing
we're almost out of
tax.
time.
The President has
the news
has made
about
a commission that will report in December.
Well, if he were really serious about addressing the deficit and the debt, he wouldn't have jammed down a $2.6 trillion new entitlement this week. The Social Security news this week reminds us that this country is on the edge of a fiscal precipice, number one. Number two, the CBO said that this wouldn't happen until 2016. The CBO got it wrong. All of the Democrats relying on the CBO numbers about health care, guess what? They are often proven wrong. No new entitlement stays within the original CBO estimates. Healthcare is going to explode the deficit and the debt, and this debt commission is just going to be a fig leaf for raising taxes and instituting a value-added tax.
Quickly, Pat. Let Pat in.
This country is Greece writ
You already
large.
said that.
Greece?
Exactly.
writ
What's
large.
happening
You
there
already
is
said
going to happen
that.
here.
Issue 3, same-sex South.
I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live.
It feels great. It's exciting to finally be married in the place that we live and work every day.
We now have the full support of our community.
Gay couples lined up outside the D.C. Superior Court over the past 3 weeks to get married, the first time that gay partners have been able to do so in the district. The District of Columbia is below the Mason-Dixon line, the borderline that separates pre-Civil War North and South. That means that Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, is the first jurisdiction in the South to recognize gay marriage as legal. The traditional South is the political home of American conservatism.
10 years.
So the D.C. gay marriage shift is big. So big that instead of 13 D.C. City Council members deciding the issue for the 600,000 residents living in Washington, D.C., plus its bounce effect on the nation at large, that decision should have been made by the D.C. voters themselves.
They should put it up on a referendum and up or down. And every place that the people have had an opportunity to weigh in, and that's 31 states, they've all voted for traditional marriage.
Question. Washington now joins Connecticut, Iowa, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont, where gays can get married. Republican Congressman King, whom you just saw, says let the people of D.C. decide whether gays should have the right to marry. Do you agree, Bill Press?
Hell no. Look, first of all, I don't want anybody from Iowa telling me how to run the District of Columbia. I don't want anybody from Utah telling me how to run the District of Columbia. I live in the district. What I would like is for my vote in the district to count. And, by the way, we elect our representatives, and they make decisions. They made the decision to allow same-sex marriage in the city. It is great for the local economy. It's, I think, a civil right, and it's about time.
Bill's afraid
and I wish
of
other
it, John.
states would join.
Bill's afraid of a vote. I was born and raised in D.C. This is a city that went 94% for Barack Obama. The city council is terrified of a vote. Why? African Americans in California voted 70% for Proposition 8 to outlaw gay marriage, and they killed it. They won't let the black Christian citizens of Washington, D.C. have a vote because they would put a stop to this outrage, which is being imposed on them by people who are afraid of the electorate. Just like
is there an economic component? Is there an economic component here?
Well,
meaning that The position taken by the council on permitting gay marriage here helps the economy terrifically in D.C.
It helps the councilmen. They give heavily. There's a very powerful community. The councilmen are terrified of the gay community.
Well, Pat is opposed, but I do not see any great outcry here in the district. I happen to live here, and I must say I don't really think of it as a southern town, but I appreciate the Dixie music. Look, this is a generational thing that's happening across the country. People are much more tolerant of gay people and gay marriage. We're now the sixth or seventh jurisdiction that has adopted this. If it were put to a vote, there would be a lot of people spending a lot of money to defeat it, and it might be defeated. But I don't see any outcry. People are accepting this.
Pat raised the issue of African Americans, which by and large in this country, they're still culturally and socially very conservative. He left out a group in California, another big cultural group that torpedoed gay marriage was Hispanics. Upwards of 70% of Hispanics also oppose gay marriage. But every single time you have seen one of these states, or now the district, go down the road of legalizing gay marriage, it's either been through judicial fiat or through the legislature or city council doing it. Every single time it has come up for a vote. 31 states, every single time it has come up for a referendum, for a vote, the American people have voted it down. And you also have liberal states like New Jersey and New York where their state legislatures have voted it down.
Is this larger than even a state phenomenon? Is this a global phenomenon? Mexico City and Buenos Aires both permit gay marriages. Is that, I don't know what the story is.
I'd like to just remind people, we have representative government in this country. It works well at the state level, at the city level. The idea we have to have a plebiscite on every issue is just...
Well, who's saying that?
Well, they are.
This is a particularly sensitive issue.
Well, any issue that they don't like what the city council does, we have to have everybody vote. I want to make another point, if I can, which is, here's the deal. What I want to know is what harm has this done? What I want to know is, name one straight marriage in this city that's been upset or ruined or destroyed or one divorce.
All feels threatened.
Because of this.
And to the extent that Monica makes,
this is let's pretend.
No, this is
let's pretend.
This is
remember that?
This is accepting human nature.
The show, the radio show, you remember that?
What was the point of
that? Pretending to be married. This is a show.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
We've provided a platform for success for some of the most respected companies in the country. We fueled their growth with a highly educated workforce and a can-do, pro-business attitude. Just ask our trusted business partner, Toyota. Visit Mississippi.org to see what we can do for you.